All right, guys, welcome to SSP Live. We are back for another episode. I think this is probably our 20th episode, roughly. Thanks again for following us, for subscribing, and liking all of our stuff on Facebook and Instagram, as well as YouTube. And to our faithful few, I know we have a few faithful subscribers. We appreciate you guys with your input, with your comments, namely Gary John, Greg Ferry, Puddin, just to name a few. But we're going to jump into some NFL. There was a lot that went on this weekend, and I know you guys are anxious to hear what we have to say about it. So we're just going to start right at the top with the hot button topic, which was the Browns upset of the Steelers. It wasn't a pretty game. That's all I got to say on it. But I'm going to let Dan kind of take the helm on this one to kick us off.
Yeah, that was probably, of all the games this weekend, I was just kind of sitting there, kind of like jaw hit the floor, because we knew that the Steelers were not playing exceptionally well going into the game. We knew that they had their struggles on offense, but I don't feel like there was that type of implosion that we saw in that game. I think it brings up a lot of questions about like them being prepared going into the game. But at the end of the day, I think that the Browns just kind of had like the perfect storm happen. You know, they had the COVID stuff come down. They found a rallying cry with Juju. They found a rallying cry with their coach not being there, and they just came together and ended up playing really well, and pulling out a victory.
So I'm gonna say something about that. So I don't think Juju had anything to do with it. I think the biggest thing that had to do with it is the very opening snap going over his head and them getting a touchdown off of it. Let's talk about how the game started. I don't think it had anything to do with Juju's crap. I mean, whatever. You can throw that out the window. I think it's just a compiling of all the crap that went wrong. That very first snap goes and they get a touchdown off of it. The very next series, Ben throws a pick. I mean, it's just that it was just. And, by the time the Steelers started playing ball, like in like the mid second quarter, able to get it to 35-10 at the half. But when you go down 28-0 early, that's just too much to overcome. You just can't come back from that unless your defense absolutely plays lights out and doesn't give up anything the rest of the game.
See that's an area where I agree with you about like the fact that the game started that way. But like I think about this. I think about like Trav. He has Hines Ward hanging up behind him. Hines Ward was a leader. He led by example and he played that way. I think that when you got guys in the locker room that are worried about other stuff outside the game, more so than just going and playing football, it lends itself to your team coming out and being unprepared. Like
so because he ran his mouth, that's why the snap went over Ben 10 and they got a touchdown.
Listen,
that contributes to that. Are you
listen,
seriously?
Dan,
we are.
Dan,
You seriously think
Dan,
if Juju hadn't said anything, that snap
do.
went over Ben's head and they would have got a
I'm
touchdown?
just saying that you
That's
don't show that you're
ridiculous, man. Get
focused.
out of here.
So I'm just gonna
You're
go
not
ahead and
focused.
I'm gonna let Trav have the
You're not
last word on
focused
this
on your
topic. Dan, you're done talking on this topic. Trav, I'm gonna let you have the last word on this topic, but I'm gonna put my 2 cents in. So to me, I texted Danny about it and I said this game started eerily similar to that Denver Broncos Seahawks like Super Bowl, like very eerily similar, where it got out of hand quick and you had the touchdown, all that kind of stuff, the interceptions early. To me, it looked like the Browns wanted it more. They really looked like they were coming in there like, hey, we want to prove it more. We want to play harder. And they did play harder. They ran all over them. The Steelers' defense looked kind of like a shell of itself at times, and it looked like older defenses that were putting, linebackers on number one receivers in the slot. So that was hard to watch. But the bottom line is they just played better. They executed better, and, it sucks that the last two playoff games turned out to be pretty much the same thing. Steelers go down in a big hole, 3-4 possessions, and they're chasing and trying to claw their way back to make it a game.
Yeah, first of all, Dan, I think we're a better show than saying that the reasons a team lost a game is because of that, or saying that that's any significant reason as to why a team lost a game was because of something that was said in the locker room or whatever.
No, I think there's a culture in your locker room that started with AB, and Mike Tomlin's the reason for it.
We're a better show than that.
That's why Juddy said to me, Mike Tomlin needs to be fired. That's what he said during that game, and there's a reason for it. Because he allows stuff in his locker room.
I don't think that's why he needs to be fired. I think he needs to be fired because he has poor game management decisions. Not going for it on 4th and 1 when you have the momentum and you're down 12 at the 41-yard line, to me, that's a poor decision with 15 minutes left in the game. That's why I think he needs to be fired, not because he allows Juju to want to dance on TikTok and say Browns is the Browns. The whole quote of Browns is the Browns is that it doesn't matter who we're playing. They're still the same team that we're always going to see. We have to play them hard.
I think we know where we're at. Dan thinks so much of it, and it is what it is. He can think what he wants, but it had nothing to do with the game. And he can think that Juju meant it disrespectfully, but I don't think he did. So Another reason I don't think he did, even if the Browns.
I think all the Browns
what
thought it
I
was
thought of the game,
disrespectful.
what I thought of the game, what I thought of
They
the
came
game,
out and said
X's and
something
O's
about
wise,
it.
the things that mattered on the field. What I thought of
It
the
mattered.
game was a couple of fluky things happened early, and a couple of bad turnovers happened early that put them in a hole that is almost insurmountable. Once the game got going, once it's like 28-0, and now actually the game, like the regular stuff starts happening, they're actually able to hold onto the ball and play some ball. It looked like then the issue became the defense for the Steelers, which is, to me, outside of the turnovers offensively, I think the main reason that the Steelers lost the game was the defense. The defense looked unprepared, they looked unmotivated, and they looked schematically like they got out-schemed it's particularly the running game. And I know there were some issues later in the game with the passing game with again, how many times in the Mike Tomlin era have we seen inside linebackers covering a team's best receiver or a dynamic slot receiver? We've seen it way too many times. That was an issue, but they couldn't block them. I mean, they couldn't penetrate up front. They didn't stop the run. It's the 8th best run defense in the league, and they got run all over. Yep. The first time these two teams played, they shut down the run. The second time they played in a meaningless game, they got some runs, but overall Pittsburgh still was controlling the running game, which was what you have to do against the Browns, and played pretty decent defense. In a game the Browns needed, by the way. This game came out, and they just weren't prepared to deal with the Browns running game. When it got to 35-23, it was a winnable game, and what happened? They couldn't get stops, and they couldn't get stops mainly the whole game because of the running game. Yes, the Steelers turned it over twice. Okay, the snap, that was an automatic touchdown. But just because you turn the ball over and you're in doesn't mean it's an automatic touchdown. They came right out after every turnover, or the first, second, third, and fourth touchdowns from the Browns off of those turnovers. They ran the ball down their throats every single time.
Well, two of those
touchdowns happen. So that's the issue.
Yep.
The offense turned the ball over. Yes, a couple of those things were fluky. A snap over his head, and then James Conner and Ben don't know who's going to fall on the ball. They just fall on the freaking ball at the 2-yard line. They're going to be fine. They're going to punt. You're going to give them good field position, but it's not going to be the disaster that it was on the first play. Conner goes to fall and he slips. Ben's watching, thinking Conner's going to catch it. So, I don't chalk that up to anything other than kind of a fluke. Deontay Johnson needs to learn how to catch the ball. I've been saying it all year. He throws up a pick. Ben makes a bad decision on his pick. That all happened. But once the game flow happened, it was a winnable game later in the game, and they couldn't stop them. And that was the issue. Tomlin runs this defense. It's on Tomlin to me more than anything. And they got out-coached. They got outplayed. I mean, simple as that. You should never lose.
We have a comment from...
For them to lose it the way they lost it was embarrassing because it just, that's all you can say about it. They had no business losing that bad and getting dominated to that team.
Just a side note,
City they were playing.
Yeah, and just a side note, two of those touchdowns of the first 28 points, two of those were like 4-play drives from like the 50. So yes, bad field position, but 4 plays, like the Jarvis Landry took it to the house on a slant on 3rd and 5. You can't let that happen, and you can't let Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt run down your throats for 3 straight plays and score a touchdown. So
I have a couple of things from our listeners here. I just want to say, so before you start jumping, there's a couple comments. One from Gary Leitner. He said, Juju made it easy for the Browns coaches to get him ready for the game. Greg Ferry said, I think it took too long for Ben to get in rhythm. Should have played him some in the last game. So, I mean, I think a lot of people have a lot of things out there that they think could have been the difference in this game. But ultimately, the Steelers underachieved.
They did.
And they did not make the splash in the playoffs that we all thought, especially when they won 11 games in a row, that they were going to make in the playoffs.
The sad reality is the Steelers haven't done anything since they made it to the Super Bowl against Green Bay and came up short. In the playoffs, they haven't done anything meaningful in the last 10 years. So Mike Tomlin has to answer for that, and I'm sure he will, and we'll see what he says in his press conference tomorrow. But so we're going to go into the other AFC games. So they were actually, pretty decent games for the most part. That game, that Ravens-Titans game, let's talk about that one first. That one, we all kind of thought, okay, like, maybe the Titans have their number. Early on in the whole game, we were like, okay, this is going to be bad. Me and Trevor watching it together, and we were like, crap, like, this is playoff Lamar. He's throwing that ugly, ugly pick. But then they settled down. They got it going. And I honestly think it was a really big milestone for Lamar to get that win. It was big for his confidence, I think.
Yeah, watching that game, I was slightly disappointed with the lack of points in it. I was really excited to watch that game. I thought it would have more points and a little more excitement. I just felt like the Tennessee offense, after that touchdown they scored to go up 10-0, they just laid a dud, man. Credit the Ravens defense. They played well. So, Lamar did what he needed to do. I felt like the Titans defense, they just allowed a couple of big runs, explosive runs. Obviously, the long one for a touchdown, and a couple other chunk runs. I felt like really just set the Ravens apart a little bit. And then with the Titans offense not doing what it needed to do, Lamar didn't have to do too much. But credit him. I mean, I know there's been some pretty critical, opinions on Lamar in here. He didn't go out there and play the greatest game ever, but he did what he needed to do. He ran the ball like he does. They held true to their scheme. Everyone that was on the Greg Roman criticism and him being the real reason, they stayed true to running the football. They ran that thing a lot with Lamar and with their backs, and they did it effectively, especially Lamar, like I said, with the big runs. And Tennessee, man, it was like, I know the Ravens are always capable of playing good defense. I always think they have a good defense, and this one was no different. They had a solid defense this year. How well, will they play? I think will determine a lot of how far they can go. And this one was a pretty good performance. But Tennessee, come on, you got to be better than that. I thought for a better, not just because they didn't win, but I just expected better from their offense. Defensively, If you look at it, they let Lamar get off and all this. But if I'm the Titans and I say I'm going to hold the Ravens to 20 points, I'll take that.
Yeah.
You got to score more than that, and they just weren't able to.
Yep, I thought the same thing. I thought, because I work with a couple of Titans fans, and I said if I'm a Titans fan, if I'm you guys, if you tell me right now Baltimore's going to score 20, I'd say I take it, because you got a pretty good chance of winning that game based on you being able to run the ball. But yeah, I mean, they just, I'll give credit to Baltimore's defense. Say they played well. I mean, their offense in Tennessee is predicated on running the football.
They dominated Derrick Henry.
Right, they did. He got nothing. That offensive line got pushed around by Baltimore's D line, and they had nowhere to run. Derrick Henry got nothing. And so when they can't run the ball, they're not a team that can just pass. So that shut down everything else. So Baltimore played them just how they.
See, I'll say one thing about that. They're not built to just pass, but in the last year, end of last year to this year with Tannehill and the progression, I feel like they are capable of some games here, in some big spots when they need to throw more. They were capable of doing it and winning games against good teams, and definitely do it better than they did against the Ravens this week. And they were they fell way below the bar of what I thought they were capable of doing. Even if the running game's being shut down, which it was, I thought they could and should have done better.
Yeah, I wanted to just give some props to Lamar Jackson. One of the things you could tell that the Titans were trying to do was they were trying to take away the middle of the field, and they were really contesting everything to Mark Andrews and some of the tight ends. And one of the things that you saw in the game, and they did just enough of it, is that Marquise Brown and Lamar Jackson were able to hook up enough to kind of make them have to at least consider that Lamar would throw to the outside. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think it was a big step for Lamar and him growing into being the quarterback that a lot of people think he can be. I think I don't want to speak for Aggie, but I think for me, I still don't know that it's a long-term solution and a long-term way to play football, but he definitely took a step forward, in my opinion, or he showed that he can throw the ball to the outside accurately in this game.
He did it better than he has in past games. But I still think in the long term, right, I think they need to develop him as a better passer overall, just for the long term of his career. I mean, if you're going to be that reliant on your legs, you're not going to be able to do it for as long a period of time if you can actually sit in the pocket comfortably and throw accurately.
Yeah, and that's the discussion we've had, and we'll probably get into more. Yeah. But I don't think they're worried about long term. They're worried about right now, the playoffs right now, and he's capable of taking them as far as they can go. With their defense playing that way if they can, and with him doing what he needs to do with his legs and doing enough with his arm, they're capable of we see what they're capable of last year at 14-2. But I want to talk a little bit about Bills Colts. This one got the playoffs kicked off, which overall I thought the playoffs. A little side note, I thought the whole wild card weekend was a real good weekend of football. Really good competitive games. The real main dud was probably the Steelers Browns, but even that game got interesting late with a lot of points too. So.
Probably Bears Saints was a little duddish.
Yeah, that was boring.
Except for Nickelodeon Slime Cam, Slime End Zone was pretty cool.
How about Nickelodeon there on that? But the Bills Colts, look, it was a competitive game. It kind of played out like I thought. I thought the Colts would give them all they could handle. I just felt like it come down to a couple key decisions by Frank. Well, one key decision by Frank Reich, not to kick the field goal at the end of the game. Then they allow them to get the touchdown on the comeback drive there right before at the end of the half. Excuse me, I said the end of the game. And then they allow the touchdown at the end of that half. And all of a sudden, it looks like Colts are going to go up 13-7 in the locker room. They're down now 14-10. Yeah. So, huge swing there. But then Colts come back. They get back in the game, and then a missed field goal. You take the field goal they should have kicked and the missed field goal, and they would have been right there. I thought the Bills the Bills offensive coordinator, I guess, the coaching, whatever the game plan was, did a little bit of a disservice to their team by running Josh Allen and running the ball a little bit more that first quarter and a half. I'm like, drop back and throw. The second drive of the game, they finally there was the one time they kind of just dropped back and threw it, and they scored a touchdown.
Yeah. They weren't letting him get into a rhythm.
Stuff on their third, fourth, and I think their third and fourth drive, and their fifth drive of the half, I guess, was the touchdown drive. But Then they go back to running the ball. They're running Josh Allen. You're putting him at risk. I mean, I know you can run him and he's capable and you want to have that element and that's something he can do and you want to do some of that, but it wasn't really working. They continue to do it. It didn't really work that well until the second half. And you're not putting the ball in his hands in the pocket, which you would think against a Colts defensive line who's been a really good run defense, the way you could get to them is throwing the ball anyway. And so I'm thinking they're allowing Indy to stay in this game with their play calling. Indy was taking long drives down the field, ball control offense, what they've done all year, and they really were able to limit and kind of shorten the game, which is what you want to do when you're playing that kind of quarterback and that kind of offense. And they almost did it, man. They were a couple of key little moments away from being able to beat the Bills.
Yeah,
I thought.
I was just gonna say,
Go
I
ahead,
think
Joe.
that we talked about obviously how the Bills started a little jittery. It looked like maybe the playoff jitters of this team finally being a team that's supposed to be a real competitor for the AFC. I thought that they looked a little jittery, and like you said, Trav, I didn't necessarily like from an offensive standpoint that they were running so much because I felt like it wasn't allowing the offense to get into a rhythm the way that they typically would. And I'm just gonna say this before I pass it to Aggie is I think they're gonna have to start a little stronger and play a little bit, well, probably significantly better if they want to beat Baltimore this weekend.
Yeah, I agree, and that's kind of one of the things I was going to touch on, Judd. Is they looked a little tight coming out, like they were a little nerves for sure. Big game, especially as a favorite when you played this well all year. It's different when you come in as a wild card. You got nothing to lose, man. You're not expected to win, But when you played the way they played, people were expecting them to win this game. So it's definitely, I think it's good though as a team to have that game where you have the nerves, the jitters, you're a little tight, but then you still get the win. I think that does a lot for you and it can make you a little bit more loose in the next round.
Yeah.
Yeah, all I'll say is that I felt like the Bills got one of the stiffer tests in the first round for a number 2 seed. I kind of felt like, man, the Bills have to be sitting there thinking to themselves, we haven't won a playoff game in 25 years. We finally are one of the top 2 teams in NFL changes the way that they do the playoffs, and we have to play the first week. But I'm happy for Buffalo fans out there. Congratulations on your 25 years of waiting, and hopefully y'all can get it done this week, maybe against the Ravens.
Yeah, so we'll obviously, due to the upset of the Browns, they will now go put the Chiefs, when a lot of people thought it might be Ravens-Chiefs. So we'll have that, and then Ravens and Bills, and we'll get to talk a little bit more about that on our Saturday show at noon.
A Ravens-Bills, man, that's a 5-star matchup.
It's going to be a great matchup.
Yep.
I'm interested to see who the 4 of us pick when we do our picks for our Saturday show. But we're going to switch over to the NFC, and the only game that really was an upset was the Rams upsetting the Seahawks, which I guess I'm not so surprised that the Rams won. I'm surprised at how they won, how convincingly they seemed to control that game.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Rams Seahawks was nearly as surprising as the Browns upsetting the Steelers, but I would say I wasn't surprised at how they won the game. I think the score, it got to 30-13 right before they got to 30-20. It was overall, it was a pretty close game most of the game. I mean, I'm not really just going to take the ending score into account. It was a pretty close game, defensive. It got a little bit boring at times because the offenses couldn't move the ball. Walford goes out in the first quarter and Jared Goff comes in, and I was kind of thinking this might be better for the Rams. If as long as his thumb holds up. He came in, he was terrible. The Rams couldn't throw the ball. Luckily, they ran the ball. Every time they handed the ball off, I mean, even with the Seahawks knowing it and knowing there was really no threat of the passing game, they had trouble stopping the kid. Can't think of his name off the top of my head, but Florida State kid Cam Akers. So I mean, credit him, man. He was the player of the game to me. He did enough to keep their offense moving the ball, keep them on the field, and getting the points that they did get. The big pick 6, but the main story, Seattle's offense it kind of mirrored what Pittsburgh's offense did the second half of the season. It just totally went to sleep. And they were a team that everyone the whole first half was like, oh, they got this explosive offense with Wilson. They got no defense. All of a sudden, they make a couple acquisitions. They get Dunlop. It really helps from Cincinnati in the trade. It really helps. And then their offense just totally wets the bed the second half. Same thing in this game. They couldn't move the ball at all. Obviously, the Rams are a great defense. So part of it's the defense, but part of it's just the Seattle offense did this. And so this is what we talked about, why Dan had it as his upset alert there. The Rams can play some serious defense. The Seahawks haven't moved the ball the whole second half of the season. And if that happens, you're going to have a defensive close game that the Rams are capable of winning. And that's kind of what happened.
Yeah, I think, looking at it, I was expecting more. We kind of talked about the Tennessee's offense, and you just really feel like they didn't do enough. Where was your offense? And for me, that was the Seahawks in this game too. It was kind of like, I expected y'all to do more. Like you said, the Rams have a good D, but they are explosive. They do have talent. I expected them to be better than this. And then for the Seahawks defense to, you clearly could see when Goff came in, he was not comfortable passing. Like he wasn't throwing a good football. To quote Colin Cowherd, throws a good football. Wasn't throwing the ball well. He wasn't comfortable. All you had to do was really focus on stopping the run, and they couldn't. like Cam Akers, like you said, every time he touched the ball, he was just gashing them for 6, 7, 8 yards. And so because of that, they were able to control the football, maintain possession. And I mean, they just, they dominated the game that way. And furthermore, Dan, you did have that upset pick, and we had one of our listeners who had said, hey, accused you of maybe doing a little day drinking, picking that upset. But hey, how'd you feel when that worked out for you?
All of us thought it was definitely possible that the Rams could
possible,
win.
Yeah.
And probably would have picked it. I would have picked it if Goff was fully healthy. And I know Dan, I think, said the same thing. Would have made it an official pick if Goff was healthy and going in for 100%.
Yeah, I think one of the things with the Seahawks, just kind of going in and trying to figure out what the heck happened, is I think you're just seeing what happens to teams like the Seahawks are really good when they had the Legion of Boom, and the defense was kind of leading the way. But I think what we're learning kind of maybe about Russell Wilson is he has to have that defense. You know what I mean? Like, if Russell Wilson has ever needed to kind of outscore somebody and even against New England in the Super Bowl, they just come up short. And I don't think that's like the way that Seattle wants to play. So I know they fired like Brian Schottenheimer today already. Like, they're making changes. I also think that Russell Wilson's contract in a sense is also hurting the Seahawks. So they're going to have to retool this year. They're going to have to figure out who they are, because I feel like within the organization, there is this battle between Russell wanting, let Russ cook versus wanting to actually run the ball.
The memes for let Russ cook on Twitter were so perfect. It was like people were posting pictures saying like let Russ cook, and then it was like a kid making ramen, like a 7-year-old kid making ramen and like boiling the water, and it was like catching the whole thing on fire. It was so good, man. Oh man. Oh yeah, Puddin says good pick, Dan. Apparently day drinking works. LOL.
All right. Well, okay. So since we got Dustin out of the way, we got to talk about my guy Taylor Heineke and that pretty entertaining Bucs-Washington football team game.
Very competitive game.
To me, it seemed to be one of the more closer games, honestly, though.
Yeah, and I mean, it had to be great seeing everybody that's just tuning in. I mean, I'm an ODU alum, and he's from ODU, so I was already like hyped to watch him play and like rooting for the kid. But you're watching some no-name, and people are probably like, oh, this is going to blow, man. This kid's going to suck. They're not going to move the ball at all. And then all of a sudden, he came out and made some great plays. And I don't mean great plays for a third stringer or great plays for –
No, he played well.
He made some flat-out great quarterback plays, athletic plays. To watch him play was a ton of fun. But went into the game, and I think all of us were like, well, any chance Washington has is their defensive line's tough. Get pressure Brady, keep it close. It'll be low scoring. There's a chance that, maybe take the points with Washington football team, and it could keep it close. Well, Washington did not play good defense. Brady looked pretty good. Their offense got in sync. They moved the ball up and down the field most of the game. But Washington with Heineke, man, and I know there'll be a later discussion as to whether the Redskins should move forward with some sort of future with him, but he played great, and that game was entertaining. Right down to the wire. So I was surprised. I couldn't believe they moved the ball. And I thought Heineke could play, and I thought he would come in and be better and surprise some people. I never expected him to play that good. And just that game was pretty entertaining, man, with some good offense, and it was really close. So, yeah, I thought it was pleasantly surprising.
Yeah, I thought it was good, man. I mean, yeah, I enjoyed watching Heineke as well. I'm a Cowboy fan, so like it was weird for me because, I can't stand Washington. So, but every time it was like they were on offense, I kept finding myself somehow kind of pulling for him just because I wanted to see Heineke do well.
Well, you also want to see Brady lose too, so there's that.
Yes, exactly. That's the two things. It's kind of like, I don't really like Brady. So, but yeah, the whole thing, like you said, Trav, everybody talks about, well, if they're going to stay in it, their defense is going to keep them in this game. But no, their offense actually kept them in the game.
Yeah.
And then their defense just couldn't make stops.
Really, Trav said it best, honestly, in our Marco Polo. It wasn't even their offense. It was Taylor Heineke himself kept them in the game.
Yeah.
He honestly
the drops for Washington, they had to fight. Heineke had to fight through those.
And you heard Dungy say it best too. He's like, this is literally the second throw of the game that he has even slightly missed, and it wasn't even a big miss. Like one, he overthrew Logan Thomas barely, which should have still been called.
I thought Logan Thomas should have caught that.
Yeah, it was
ball,
catchable.
He called it a miss. Yeah,
it was catchable. The other one was a little bit short to the left later in the game, and he goes the second rare miss that he's had on a throw. Other than that, he's been on point.
But how about the two little plays? And I know Aggie and Danny were comparing that aspect of his pocket presence to sneak out of a couple of what definitely should have been sacks and to sneak out of it. Comparing him to Tony Romo. But how about the two plays he made where, he kind of backpedals and then just shuffles forward, and then the one he runs into the corner 20 yards, and
touchdown,
who knew he
man.
had that kind of speed and dives to the corner? He just made some really athletic plays. I didn't even know he had that kind of athleticism. I know he ran the read option, and he could run watching him at ODU because I used to watch him play at ODU. And I knew he had athleticism, but I didn't think he'd outrun some NFL athletes to the corner like that and get in and out of the pocket and avoid some sacks the way he did, man. It was impressive.
Yeah, the whole game, like you guys were like, when are you gonna give my boy Heineke some like
You were
props?
hating, man.
I was
You
demanding the entire
and
game
I'm
that
just sitting
Dan
there like-
finally give Heineke. He kept saying Heineke, first of all. He couldn't even pronounce
He
his
called
name
him
right.
Tyler,
I
too,
was
a couple
offended about
times. He
that,
called him
and
Tyler
I
a
wanted
couple
him to
times.
give him his credit, and he wouldn't do it.
I treated him like the third string backup he was when I was saying his name. But no, in all seriousness, I was sitting there and I was just thinking to myself, you know, my Super Bowl pick, obviously one of them was Tampa Bay. So I'm sitting there thinking to myself, if this dude takes out Tampa Bay, man, I'm just going to have to eat my words so bad. So, like, I thought he was playing great, but he was kind of irritating me at the same time. Like, where'd you come from, dude? Like, how does this guy go, you know,
Old dirty, baby.
unfound for this amount of time and then goes out and plays like that?
Yeah, he's had some injury issues. He's been on a few different teams. Trav and I have actually talked about it a couple times in the past because he's played against the Steelers for a snap. And he got hurt when he got tackled.
He always gets hurt when he gets a chance to get
injuries.
in. He was supposed to make Minnesota's roster his rookie year, and I think maybe they were going to look at making him actually the number 2 there his rookie year, and then he got hurt during the preseason, and they had to move on.
Yeah.
So, and that's an issue. He got hurt in this game, and so that's going to be the issue. If he is going to have a future with them, if they were really seriously wanted to give him a look at being, I mean, obviously Washington does not have an established, you know, franchise future quarterback, so they could give him a look if they wanted to. If they're going to do that, he's got to figure out how to stay healthy, or he's not going to get it.
Yeah, and I think
One of the
Go ahead, Dan. Go ahead, Dan. I'll wrap it up after this.
I was just gonna say, yeah, you can wrap it up. I just want to say one of the really cool things that's happened after the game. If you haven't checked it out, it's actually I know y'all aren't Brady fans, but Brady and Alex Smith kind of coming together at the end. It was a really cool moment there. So if you have a second, check it out. But it was really just Brady just giving Alex Smith props for coming as far back as he did, and you know doing what he did this year. So that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, that's something to watch too. You know, in the future on a future show, probably once the season dies down, and everything, and we start to look into the off season to see if he does come back. Because I know one of the things he wanted to do was come back and prove that he could play. So I'm thinking a lot of people think that he might hang it up now, especially if that calf injury continues to be an issue. But I think if Washington football team had Heineke playing at that level all season as their starter, then they probably do win nine games or so and actually make it a formidable NFC East. But hopefully he gets a shot. Puddin agrees that he deserves a shot as well to at least compete for the job. But before we go into our last little mini segment of this episode, before we hit the post show, just looking ahead, Saturday we'll have our divisional round preview, which will be all the games. So the 4 games that we'll talk about, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. So that'll be on Saturday at noon again. So we'll be doing that show. We'll put our picks out there. We'll do some preview for each game. So join us at 12 on Saturday for that. So we'll have obviously the Bills and the Ravens playing. You got Green Bay playing against the Rams. Snooze fest of a game. You got Green Bay playing versus the Rams, and then you got the Chiefs will take on the Browns, and then obviously last but not least you have the Saints Bucks, which will be the premier one for me to watch. But let's talk a little bit about some other NFL news. Obviously, there are a lot of head coaching vacancies, and something that was hinted at by Dan previously to us was that there might be another one, and it ended up that there was one, and it was his Philadelphia Eagles. So, Dan, why don't you kick us off there?
Yeah, first of all, for anybody thinking that we forgot about the Saints Bears, we didn't. The game was so awful that the real winner of the game was Nickelodeon, and really anyone who got slimed or saw the slime, that was pretty cool. But yeah, the slime zone was pretty cool. But yeah, let's talk about this situation in Philly. You know, it came out a couple days ago that, you know, hey, Doug Peterson's job might not be safe. And I all along kind of got the sense from listening to some of the beat reporters and some of the things that Howie and Jeffrey Lurie were putting out there, and thought to myself, like, you know, and just looking at the salary cap situation, like, it's way easier to get rid of a coach than it is to get rid of Carson Wentz and the amount of money that he has, you know, that the Eagles have kind of invested into him. And so at the end of the day, it sounds like it was a mixture of that and the fact that Dougie P just really wasn't willing to bring in a big-time offensive coordinator, and that's what Jeffrey Lurie wanted. And so he basically said, hey, Doug, you know, cast some vision for what you see this team is going to be and what they're going to do. And he just basically said, like, he was just going to continue to do things the way he was, and that he didn't want anyone to tell him what to do. And so that's where we're at now. Eagles are in catch-up mode. They didn't expect to be doing this. I don't even think Howie Roseman really thought that Doug would get fired, but in my opinion, just kind of the end all is that if Jeffrey Lurie was going to fire Doug, he needed to fire Howie Roseman as well. It was a total team effort for them to be as bad as they are to be in the situation that they're in. And so I think they all needed to be held accountable, not just Doug.
I think a lot of people know that Howie Roseman's not going anywhere. That's another Twitter meme, is that people say like, oh yeah, he'll be there for like 100 more years until he dies, which is a shame.
On that point, first of all, on that point, I want to ask Dan a question. Then, I don't have a huge problem with Doug Peterson getting fired. You guys know, I've criticized his constant 4th down and 2-point conversions attempts.
Analytics stuff.
All year and all really the last 2 years. I just never got what the whole. I know he won a Super Bowl in the 2nd year, and then everybody crowned him, and I just never got the whole craze around him. Other than, okay, they won a Super Bowl, like, great, let's see some longevity. All the coaches that I respect and put on respect at a high level and really think are the better coaches are guys who've done it for years and years and years and put teams in a position to be in the playoffs almost every year or year after year.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't surprise me. Why isn't there some account? Because I agree, I don't think it's all on Doug. There is huge personnel issues. Why isn't Howie Roseman? Why isn't he? Is he not, like, is there no consideration? What's the buzz around, like, how safe his job is? Is it just like, no, he's sticking with Howie? Is he just that close to Howie? I mean, what's the deal there?
It sounds to me like, from what I've been hearing and from what Jeffrey Lurie said, there was a lot of reporters that asked good questions. And basically what Lurie said was he knew that the Eagles were going to put themselves in this salary cap position because they were going for it these last 2 years. And so, anything that I guess Roseman did, he had some form of communication with Lurie about, and so he's not really holding him accountable for the salary cap situation. The problem that I have with it is Lurie would not speak to Roseman's failures as a GM in the draft, and that's where I have a problem.
Right, that's my thing. Okay, if you want to say you're going for it, that means you went out and like made a bunch of moves that were really good. Mm-hmm. Where are those at? Because I haven't.
Yeah,
they didn't come.
I have a real issue with Lurie. Yeah. They've been drafting terrible, and he's like, well, we wanted to get guys, but we every time we wanted to get certain guys, and they mentioned some of them, like Dalvin Cook one year, they were looking at him, and Justin Jefferson, and I think they like CD Lamb this year. They were like, well, teams just got him right before us.
You can say that all you want post, like,
I know, I agree. I don't
hindsight.
think it's So I think Jeffrey
easy to
Lurie
say you wanted those guys after they put up like 3 good years in the NFL.
Yeah. So
right. Let me to find the next best guy, and there's plenty of them out there.
Let me ask this. So my thought was, and Trav agreed as well, and I had the same thought when he talked about it yesterday, is that to me it sounds like they want Wentz over Peterson, and they kind of want to keep Wentz. And I don't know, and we can get into this another day because we don't have time to get into it, but we don't necessarily know if that's because of they just don't want to eat that money, or they think it's going to be too hard to move him, or if they truly think he could be the quarterback. But we had a question from one of our viewers who said, do you think if it was you, would you start Hurts or would you go with Wentz next year as a starter? I'll go first, and I would say that I would give Hurts the opportunity to have a full offseason with training and getting training camp and all that kind of stuff, and then see what he has, and give him a shot. Because if not, you already know what you have at Wentz. Wentz has had 3 years. He's shown you what he's going to be.
Well, I'll say this about that. I think we've seen Wentz play at a pretty high level before this season. I think and this is what I think the front office thinks. I think that they believe Wentz can be the guy with the right coach, and that's why they want someone else, because probably one is a money factor because of how much they have tied into him in the salary cap and his contract. Mm-hmm. And if they were maybe trying to, like you said, Dan, trying to bring another offensive guy in to be underdog that maybe they think could be better for Wentz and develop him a little bit better, or be better for him for his quarterback play. And he just said, no, I don't want Wentz. I think that was probably the root issue of them, their disagreement on whether Wentz is the guy.
And Dan basically said that, but another point to that, and I think the reasoning behind that is when you bring in Doug Peterson as a head coach, you bring him in as the guy who's going to be the offensive mind. Mm-hmm. You don't bring Doug Peterson in and then things go bad offensively and you say, well, why don't you just be the game manager and work a little bit more with the defense?
That's
and let's bring
his mindset.
No, then you just fire him. So if they really want a different guy to come in and be the offensive control guy, then the best thing to do is to move on from Doug.
Right. And I think that's what they ultimately ended up doing. And we'll see who they bring in. But at the end of the day, this isn't a 1-year fix. I will answer your question, Juddy. I don't think you can keep both guys. I think Wentz has a very fragile ego with the full situation that happened. And so whoever you decide is your guy, you need to stick with them. And you literally need to bring in a number 2 that is, definitely a number 2.
Yeah.
Josh McCown type.
Nate Sudfeld.
If you bring in anybody that's gonna
Already got
push
him.
Wentz,
Just elevate
Yeah.
him. Elevate him to
No,
2.
I agree, Dan.
So-
I agree. I think that they need to make their decision quickly because they need to decide if they're going to try to really shop Wentz. Then they need to try to
Right.
make that happen.
But
If
that's
not,
gonna,
if
there's
not,
gonna
they
be
need
input
to.
from the new coach, though.
Yeah, but if
You know what I mean?
not,
the new coach is gonna have.
well, they're going to
input.
hire the new coach soon, so it'll be made
They're
in the
probably
offseason.
gonna. I would assume they're not gonna hire someone unless if the front office wants Wentz, they're gonna say that to the coach, and he's
Yeah.
gonna have to be on board with that to take that job.
Which is fine. Whatever they do, they need to get rid of the other guy. So if they're going to keep Hurts, then they need to
Yeah, and
obviously
I
shop
think for
Wentz. And if they're
Hurts,
going
to be
keep,
fair to him,
they need to shop him.
give him a
and
shot
give him a shot
somewhere.
somewhere if they're not going to move forward with him because he's not going to get any younger.
There's
and
other
Wentz isn't
teams that could
old.
take a starter, and Hurts could be a starter on some other teams.
Yep.
definitely.
Yep. So we'll see what happens. There's a lot of head coaching vacancies. I think we all agree that Peterson will land on his feet, probably with a head coaching job. With how many there are, there's 7 now. I think. Dan, did you say?
Yeah.
7 head coaching vacancies, and that's just what's happened right now. But yeah, that's pretty much all we have for our standard show. We will do a little bit of post show talking, but thank you guys for showing up. We had a great viewership today and a lot of input from our chat, so really appreciative of you guys
thanks,
dropping by. Thanks for following us and liking us. Again, don't forget Saturday at 12 p.m. for our divisional round special. Trav's laughing at me. But don't forget our 12 p.m. divisional round special where we'll talk about our picks. We'll get them all in. This one will not be a clean sweep across the board. I can guarantee you that. We will have some differences
Thanks
in
for stopping
opinions.
by.
So thanks for stopping. No, but thanks for joining us, and that's all we have for this week. But let's talk about some post show stuff here. So I kind of wanted to get into a little bit of some of the other head coaching vacancies. I don't want to talk too much about the Deshaun Watson stuff in Houston and kind of what that's turning into a mess, just because we've already talked about that off the live
You
air.
a little of
But
that.
well, we've talked about it a little bit, off the live air about how it's like what kind of like. I guess my question is, a lot of people in media now are saying that job with the Texans is looking like probably the least desirable out of all of them because of all the drama and turmoil that's going on.
Look, here's what I would say about that particular part of it. You think any of these coaches care about the drama when they can go get a chance to go coach Deshaun Watson and have the guy for the next 15 years that is the guy? They want that job. They want that job. I can promise you they want that job.
They went 4-12 and he had his best year ever.
Watson.
He had his best year ever and they went 4-12.
Right. So it's going to take a couple
Matt
years.
Stafford does that every year.
But you got the guy. The first piece is okay, do
So
you
does
have
Dak
the guy?
Prescott.
You have the guy quarterback. If you got that, you can build that up in a couple years around him. So I don't think they're as bad as a 4-12 team anyway. I think with the right coach this year, they could have had that thing at 7 or 8 wins, even with the personnel they have. So obviously the draft pick situation for the next couple years is messed up, but you can still do some things and make the draft picks that you do have count and build up enough around them with the quarterback where you can be a playoff team by probably year after next, and then at that point your draft pick situation's better. You make the right moves, you can start contending for a Super Bowl with that guy. So it's still a desirable job because the quarterback is always the first thing I think most teams consider, other than maybe ownership, which we talked about with the San Diego thing. But I still think the quarterback's even more important than that. But my thing is this: everyone keeps talking about who's going to trade it, who's going to get it, and this and that. First of all, Deshaun Watson has not come out and said, I want to be traded. I'm demanding a trade. First of all. Second of all, he can say that all he wants. They don't have to trade him. And I don't think they're going to trade him. I wouldn't trade him. I don't care what he says. I would absolutely not trade him and say, okay, you don't want to play for us? There's no amount of money we can get or no amount of draft picks that we can get that will ever replace having you. So you go ahead and retire then if you want to do that. He's not going to do that. They just need to sit down with him, get the new GM in there, talk to him, talk through his stuff, listen to him, make him feel listened to, and all this stuff that these current athletes are so sensitive about. Just do whatever you got to do and just make it happen to get him somewhat happy, and then start doing the right things. That's honestly what he wants, right? He just wants the right things done. Get some players in there, and make good moves for the team. Don't screw us long term with all these draft picks you traded away, and then trade away our best receiver. Get players in there that can help him win. Start winning, and he'll be happy, and it'll be fine. I keep hearing. I just feel like there's so much out there. I was just telling the guys this before the show. I feel like everyone out there, and I know all the stuff that they said. Andre Johnson said in these Texans, there's this uproar to get he needs to get out of there. All right, everybody else can want that all they want because they feel sorry for Deshaun and a bad organization. Plenty of quarterbacks has been in bad organizations. Every year, one gets drafted. A really good college quarterback gets drafted to a team that's in a bad state every year. It's just how it goes. So everyone can want that all they want, but I haven't heard. I think everybody wants it so bad, even more than Deshaun does. You know what I mean? Everything will settle down. He'll stay there in Houston. If Houston knows anything what's good for at all, they'll keep him there no matter what.
Yeah.
I mean, it would only make sense that after they've given away so many other great players, they would just give him away too for pretty much pennies on the dollar. So
maybe, and if they do, then they're really stupid.
They did start. Yeah. They did start a good faith measure, and Trav, I did read that Adam Schefter tweeted that they did officially put in a request to interview Eric Bieniemy. So I think he got his request on that with his input mattering.
Yeah, they can't. They ended up not being
Well,
able to interview him because
whoever-
of the anti-tampering stuff. So they basically, as long as the Chiefs are in the playoffs now,
They just put a request.
they won't
in
be
so
able
they
to.
can-
But they basically said like that's too little, too late, and like that was a good faith gesture, or not even a good faith gesture, but like the gesture basically was crap at the
Yeah.
end of the day.
I got you. Look, here's the thing though, with this issue and with the new coach and whoever it's going to be, I think you get somebody who's high on Deshaun Watson, who really likes him, and then
Who
that
doesn't
guy,
like him?
I
right?
know.
Well, I know. I mean,
Who
I
wouldn't
agree.
like him?
I
Any
agree.
football person that doesn't like him is out of their mind.
I agree.
Bill O'Brien
But that
apparently
guy,
didn't like
whoever that
DeAndre
guy
Hopkins.
is, he goes, obviously, his first thing he's going to do is go, I'm going to have a conversation. I'm going to have a sit down with Deshaun Watson. And I'm going to be like, look, man, you're my guy. Like, I know you're the leader on this team, man. I need you. I need you to buy in. I need everybody to buy in. Like, you are my guy. And make him, that coach should make him kind of like be, a leader with that coach, or like have some input and, hey, let's talk about what you do well. Let's talk about what you want to see with this offense or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't think Trav believes
make
in the
him
buddy
feel
buddy
more of a part.
of coaches and quarterbacks. I feel like Trav. You're more of like a, I don't know, just like
Yeah, but head coach
it's,
quarterback
it's,
is a
it's,
different
like it's a
relationship,
business, and like he shouldn't be like, oh well, I want to do this with the offense. I want to do this. Like the quarterback
I'm
shouldn't
not
be able to
saying,
tell
like,
them.
Oh, no, no, no,
buddy
no.
thing, but
I'm
from
fine
a
with
work
I'm
standpoint.
fine with a quarterback. The things we talked about, Juddy, was I don't think a quarterback should complain when he didn't get input on the GM. That's none of your
Right.
business.
No,
When
it
we're
was the
talking
head
about
coaching
game
issue
plan,
though.
When we're talking about the game plan, yes, the quarterback should have
What do you
input
think
with
about the
his
head coach
OC
though?
and his head coach.
Should a quarterback have some sort of input about at least who they consider
No.
for a head coach?
No, players don't control GM decisions. LeBron's the only one that gets that.
Well, what if-
I mean,
so what I'm
plenty of
saying
people
is,
have ripped him for that.
To what
But-
Aggie's
but-
to what Aggie's note is, what I'm saying is, what if this guy is a guy that like Deshaun just like, oh, I just don't like that guy, and then he's gonna try to come in. This head coach is gonna try to come and be his friend, and it's like, yeah, I'm not gonna buy into what you're doing.
I mean, why would Deshaun like? I mean, you're
Why is
putting
he
these
automatically gonna
hypotheticals
write
out
somebody
there. and
off?
I just don't think that's how it works. Like, oh, I don't like him.
Well,
Probably
hopefully he
somebody
doesn't.
he's never even met. Like, how do you know you don't like him? And I would say, I mean, look, I would say in the smoothest way possible, not to disrespect him because I don't want him to leave town, is, quite frankly, it's not your decision. So we're going to hire who we want to hire.
Well, I think the problem was that the Texans told them that he would have input.
Right.
That's
That's the case, and
Yeah,
I've heard that,
exactly.
but I also
Right.
know how things can get skewed. What did they exactly tell them? If they directly said, "Hey, we want your input. You will have input. So keep that in mind. Be thinking about it. Blah blah blah." And then turned around and it was crickets, and they just made their decision. Okay, that's very disrespectful. So I can understand that if that's true. I don't know that I necessarily think it is though.
Well, I'll say this too, Trav, just from personal experience that you and I know of. It does get dicey too when you give a quarterback a little bit too much power, as we saw with, apparently the rumor is at least, and it seems to be pretty true that, Ben's guy is Randy Fichtner, and that was his guy that he wanted his quarterback. He was
I don't think
quarterback's
that's
coach
why he
or
made
OC.
Fichtner the OC.
You don't think so?
No, I think
Ben
he was
had a
also
lot
Tomlin's
of-
guy.
I think Ben had a
Tomlin
lot
and him
of,
coached back. Tomlin he brought Fichtner on the staff because they were buddies from like Memphis, coaching at Memphis back in like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
So I think there was a rapport. I think part of the reason was he knew there was a great rapport between Ben and Fichtner.
Yeah.
But I think he also trusted Fichtner because he was his guy from back in the day, and he just really respected him as an offensive mind.
Well, the beat
And
writers,
off-topic,
and the
Fichtner
reporters,
off-topic Fichtner does need to be replaced.
I was
I
going to say the reports around.
and if
around
Ben has a
Pittsburgh-
problem with that, he needs to tell Ben, look,
Yeah.
we didn't perform. You can admit that we didn't perform. When you're
I think
calling
Ben's
plays
done
and they're the
making
only ones that
decisions
work,
for what
you
he
know he
should.
needs to go, Ben. I know he's your guy, but he needs to be told
the
that too,
rumors
so-
are is that he will not be retained. So I'm wondering. It would not surprise me if tomorrow Tomlin during his press conference says that like Fichtner's gone, because he has done that before in his postseason performance one time with
I don't
Todd
think
Haley.
he's going to do it tomorrow. I
did
think
with
give
Todd
it a
Haley.
week. Give it a week or two. Let him think about it a
Well,
little
the rumor
more,
is from
and
the
I think
reports from the Steelers beat writers and stuff is that they're hearing that he's not going to be retained.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
maybe
well, they're
Dougie
hearing,
P.
but like, how would they
Dougie
even
P.
know?
is going to
It's-
move a few hours west.
So let's talk about some other coaching things. Like I'm hearing Urban Meyer to the Jaguars, and he's kind of holding them hostage right now. Like
Yeah,
in a
he's
sense.
really.
If they pay him $12
Like,
million, then they're literally going to set their franchise back another 5 to 10 years again.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. And like I don't know. Like somebody who doesn't know if they really want to coach, that's not somebody
Yeah.
that I don't know if I can invest in that.
Yeah. Do you want a guy who's like,
Maybe I will. For
all right,
12
let
million.
me have the weekend to think about it, because the rumor is that he's assembling a staff in case he wants to do it. But it's like, let me have the weekend, and it's like he's still going, and so yeah, and it's like if you don't know if you want to coach, if you're really like, should I really do this? Like, yeah, do you want that guy who doesn't know if he wants to coach your team? I'm not really sold that Urban Meyer will be that great in the NFL anyway.
Me either.
I kind of want to see it. I kind of want to
Yeah,
see it
be
just to see
interesting.
the experiment and see if he does, because we've all wondered about certain college coaches and some try it and some don't. So I don't mind it. I don't think it really necessarily will work. It seems he's a little past his prime and past his energy level. He's retired from 2 straight teams from like he has health issues, right? And it's too stressful for him, and he has like these heart things or whatever because of all the stress.
Conveniently at the same time as some other like shady things are happening too, but
Got out when
Yeah, and
Super
some
Saiyan-
of it's been that, but and now you want to come do the NFL, which is only going to be more stressful if anything. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
going to be
And
interesting. I'm really excited to see kind of where all the dominoes fall for head coaches.
It's been
I'm kind of
surprising to me
surprised we
nobody's-
haven't had anybody yet. Yeah,
Nobody's been hired yet.
They
I
want-
wonder
they
what's
want-
going on.
Robert.
They want
you
playoff.
usually start
They want
seeing
playoff
things fall into
coaches.
place quick. That's true
Yeah.
too. There's a lot of hot coordinators in the
But
playoffs. So.
yes, you do want playoff coaches, but usually about like there's usually 7 or 8 jobs every year. I mean, at least 5,
At least
you know,
five,
as
yeah.
many as 9 or 10. So around 7 or 8. Usually, like half of them are full within the first 4 or 5 days.
Right, you usually get
And
a
then
few
some of the
already by
people
now.
hold out for the playoff guys, but not everybody. So I'm surprised that there hasn't been one hire.
That tells me that there's like a few guys in the playoffs that everybody kind of wants.
So let me ask
Yeah,
you
but
guys.
like
who,
I think. Go ahead.
no, go ahead, Dan.
Bills OC, I know was one.
I
was
heard
gonna-
Robert Sala was going to
Robert
the Jets.
Saleh,
That's
yeah.
what I heard. I heard second
I heard
interview
that.
was
the
there,
coordinator
and
for the
when
Niners.
the Eagles requested an interview with him, and that moved up the Jets timeline because they really were impressed with his interview. So
Who's the Bills OC?
Brian Dable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I heard a
And they
lot
have-
of mutual interest between him and the Chargers.
I heard Leslie Frazier might get some more looks too.
I don't think he's going to be that good of it. He did it once. He was okay.
What do you guys
I don't
think
he's
about?
that great of a coach.
What do you guys think about the latest with Chuck Pagano retiring? Who do you think is going to take over the D coordinator for the Bears? Because that's probably
Mitch
a pretty hot.
Trubisky.
That's probably. That's probably a pretty good.
Trubisky?
You know, they're known for their defense, right? You know, they're a team that likes to play defensive football. Like that's probably a pretty sought after job for defensive minded people. My question to you guys,
Yeah.
my main question is, who is the number 1 head coaching prospect that you would pick if you were one of these teams? Who would you be one?
The guy nobody's talking about. I told you my guy, Josh McDaniel, but he's not being
yeah.
talked about. I guess he's off the market. Maybe he doesn't want to coach. Maybe they really are, you know, since he
They
resigned.
got something agreement in place there in New
Yeah.
England, I think.
So-
Yeah.
That's who I'd
Well-
want if he was out there. But
I think the guy that Philly should really, really think about, and he's in house, is Deuce Staley. I think that they should.
I've heard a
really
lot of talk
consider-
about him.
you
I
really
think they
Deuce
should-
Staley?
I've heard
He's been coaching
Real
for almost 10
consideration.
years now, and he's moved up. He's been through all. He was with Chip Kelly. He's with Peterson. He was with Andy Reid.
he's
gotten a
assistant
lot of
head
the-
coach now, right?
yeah,
he's
he's
running
gotten-
backs
Yeah.
and assistant head coach.
He's gotten a lot of buzz
Yep.
from the Philly media and the Philly fan base on
I
Twitter
mean,
too.
Philly
saying,
Philly
like,
already loves him, you know.
they do like him. They
I mean,
say
Malcolm
Report, he got
Jenkins came
reported
out.
with
I saw
players.
Malcolm Jenkins' post basically saying like this is a guy that players always want to play for. He's the guy that you
Yeah.
will
I
respect.
just think that
you
he-
will respect.
For where the Eagles are trying to go, I don't know that there's an outside candidate that looks at that job and says, "Oh, that's attractive to me."
I mean, it's a
But I
dumpster
think Deuce
fire. at the
Staley,
moment.
yeah, Deuce Staley, it would actually be good for him to not have to worry about personnel decisions so much, but just to coach, because I think that's what he wants to do. He's not really. I mean, I'm sure he could let them know who he wants, but he would need to bring in a strong OC and a strong defensive coordinator, but he could lead men well, I think.
When's the last time you've seen like a in our era active like player actually be a like legitimate like coaching prospect or coach? Like I don't know who's the best like coaching that was like a good player, because he was a pretty solid player.
Mike Vrabel
Yeah,
was a
Vrabel,
pretty
yeah.
good player.
Vrabel's probably
Yeah, I guess so,
successful. I just wonder because a lot of these guys that are like the best coaches are always like they were former players back in the day, but like they've been coaching for 20, 30 years and they have the experience.
I think
under
for
their
like our
belts.
parents, like Herm Edwards, most of them probably remember him playing. So
I mean, Jim Harbaugh, he's college, but I mean,
right.
Yeah.
he was in the NFL. He was a decent quarterback in the league.
This
Well,
conversation
yeah,
got
like-
out of hand.
Yeah, I know, kind of spiraled. But
Whatever, dude.
there's a lot of coaching vacancies, and we'll see what comes
You
from
can't
them.
always talk about Juju.
We prefer
Thank
to
the Lord
don't,
for that.
actually.
Thank God we don't. There's only
Yeah.
one guy in here who wants to talk about Juju.
Yep.
I have to do it because nobody else in here.
I'll say this,
doesn't.
Dan, to just I'll
irrelevant?
say this. I want him back, and I want him to be a Steeler for life. I don't think it's going to happen, but I do want him back. I think he is Pittsburgh football. And
he's a free agent, right?
yeah, he is, along with 8,000 other players in the Steelers. with no
Well,
cap
you guys,
space.
one of these shows, we're gonna have to talk about the Steelers cap situation because it's not great either, just like Phillies. But
Yeah, we'll have a
And-
chance to
and-
do that in the offseason, I think. There's
Yep.
a lot of teams that have. Cowboys have the same thing. Like, what are we
Yeah.
going to do with Dak? Like, yeah.
Yep. A lot of
issues,
decisions to be
man.
made. Well, I think that's pretty much gonna wrap up our night live here, guys. Once again, join us on Saturday for our divisional preview, our special show
12
at
o'clock.
12 p.m. We will be there. Yeah, thanks for joining us, and we hope you guys enjoyed the show.